Hi guys, let's discuss the double checkmate pattern today. I'm very excited to share this with you, since this is one of my favorite chess patterns. It is mind-blowing and is very easily overlooked by the opponent. This checkmate pattern will make your opponent think, hey, that checkmate came out of nowhere. Let's see an example in action on the board. We are white, and white is to move and to win. It seems that black's position defensively is pretty solid here, but there is actually a forced checkmate in 5 using the double checkmate pattern. Let me first show you the pattern and then we'll analyze it further. First white goes queen takes e5 check, essentially sacrificing the queen. Now the king can go to f8, king f8, but then rook d8 is a checkmate, so knight takes e5. And now here comes the double check. Bishop f6 check. The bishop is giving a check and the rook is also giving a check. That's a double check. And when your opponent is in double check, the only way to survive is to move the king. Now the king can go to king f8, but then again, rook d8 is a checkmate. So another alternative is king h6. But then comes a second double check. Bishop g7. Again, there's a double check. The king has to move only one way, which is king h5. And now I'm sure you can see the checkmate. Rook h6, checkmate. If the checkmate looked like it came out of nowhere to you, and you're not sure you can perform this in a real game, well, worry not. We will analyze in depth all the requirements of the double checkmate pattern, and hopefully by the end of this video, it should be a second nature to you. Okay guys, let's look at a new position. This position is simpler than before and I think really illustrate why double check is so powerful. Here there is a checkmate in 1 with double check. It's black to move and to win with checkmate in 1. Bishop b4 and it's a checkmate. Double check is so powerful because as you see here, when your opponent is in double check, the king has to move. And if the king doesn't have anywhere to move, well then it's a checkmate. So because of that, it's such a forcing move to put a double check on your opponent. This might seem like an obvious statement, but when your opponent is in check, a single check that is, there are 3 ways the opponent can survive that single check, right? So for example, in this position, if instead of checkmating the opponent, we do a single check, such as this, just a check, then the opponent has 3 ways. First, parry with his own piece. Or secondly, move the king. Or thirdly, just take the piece that is giving a check, if that's possible. So there are 3 ways. But when you're in double check, you have to move the king, otherwise it's a checkmate. And that's why it's so powerful. It's a forcing move. It simplifies your calculation. In a sense, it gives you an extra tempo to do what you want to do without your opponent being able to take your piece. For example, here, as you can see, the queen is attacked. And then the bishop is also attacked. But it doesn't matter, it's a checkmate because the king couldn't find a square to move. And this is also another reason why it's so powerful. Because it's very easy to overlook this pattern, right? When you're playing, especially in a faster time control, you just intuitively think that this move might not be possible because you have a3 if you're playing white. And then you have knight on c7 as well. Okay, new position and pattern for double check. Double check happens quite a bit in the opening. Here we have a king still in the middle, not castled yet. We have the queen in the center. And as you can see, we have a rook here. And then a bishop here. Notice that the rook and the bishop would be able to give the king a double check if the king is on the d file. Here actually there's a forced checkmate in 3. First we sacrifice the queen. Very common pattern for this double check in the opening. Now the king doesn't have anywhere to go. So king takes d8 is the only way. And now bishop g5 check. Again, it's a double check. So as I've said previously, the king doesn't have any other choice but to move. Black doesn't have any other move. Has to move the king, and there's only one way to go to, which is the previous square at e8. And now I'm sure you can see the checkmate, right? Which is rook d8. and it's a checkmate. Another double checkmate pattern here. It doesn't just happen with bishops and rook as we saw earlier, but it happens as well. You can do it as well with the rook and a knight here. Again, the pattern is pretty similar to before. We have a queen, we have a knight, we have a rook, and then we have opponent king in the center. Can you see the double checkmate pattern? Please feel free to pause the video first if you'd like to figure it out, and then we'll solve it together. Okay, I'm pretty sure you solved it by now. First, we sacrifice the queen. Again, queen d1. The king doesn't have anywhere to go, so king takes d1, and now knight e3 check. Again, it's double check, so the king has to move. There is no other way, and the king has only one square to go, which is king e1, and now rook d1, checkmate. Okay guys, yet another pattern for the double checkmate pattern. Black to move and to win with double checkmate pattern. Previously, we've seen this pattern with the combination of a rook and a knight, and a rook and a bishop. Here we have a bishop and a knight. That's as much hint as I can give you. I strongly suggest for you to pause the video and figure things out on your own first. This one is really satisfying when you solve it. Did you find it? I'm sure you did. First we go queen g2, sacrificing the queen, and now king takes, the only way for white to go. And now there's a double checkmate. Knight f4. It doesn't matter that the knight is attacked because we have this check, and now this escape square is covered, so the king can only go one way, which is king g1. And now knight h3 is a checkmate. So far we've seen double checkmate with a rook and a bishop, a rook and a knight and a bishop. Now let's see the pattern played out with a queen and a knight. Again, as usual, feel free to pause the video if you like, and then we'll solve it together. Okay, there is no double check yet, so we have to put the opponent's king in a position where there is double check. So we go bishop g7. Notice that obviously if your first move is knight e8 before, then that's a big blunder because the opponent will just take the queen. There is no double check, so that's possible. Here, black has only one way, which is king takes g7, and now there's a double check because the king is there. When there's a double check, then the king has to move. There's two squares to go to, but king g8, then queen g7 is a checkmate, so king h6 instead. And from here on, there's a forced checkmate already. First, queen f4, check. Now if king h5, then knight g7, checkmate. So best way for black to continue is probably g5. But then queen f6, check. King h5. Knight g7, check. King h4. And then queen f2, checkmate. Okay, last position we're gonna look at today. This one really shows the power of double check. There will be multiple double check that you need to do to checkmate the white king. Again, as usual, feel free to pause the video and then we'll solve it together. Okay, first we sacrifice the queen so that the king moves forward, and then there's a double check now. Rook g3 check. It doesn't matter that the rook is threatened because we have double check, so the king has to move. King h2. Now rook g2, another double check. Again, means king has to move. So king h1, the only way for the white king. And here gotta be a bit careful and precise. It might look like if you pull the rook back, then it's a checkmate, but white actually has a good defense in e4. So the right way here is another double check. Now again, the white king has to move. Only one way to move, which is king g1. And now I'm sure you can see the checkmate, which is rook h1, checkmate. Okay guys, that's all for double checkmate pattern. Just to recap, this is a very powerful pattern because when your opponent is in double check, then the king has to move. That's why it's such a forcing move. And this can be performed as well with different combination of pieces as we've seen in this video. Please do subscribe to my channel if you like this kind of content. I also have a checkmate pattern playlist that you might want to check out. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.